Alright, here's me, Jeffrey Scott Marlowe. That's my name, Jeffrey Scott Marlowe, and we're back at the seal of the President of the United States. This is Presidential Military Service. And here we got George Washington was a general in the Continental Army. James Madison was a colonel in the Continental Army. James Monroe was a lieutenant colonel in the Continental Army. Lieutenant colonel in the Lieutenant Army. And James Madison was a colonel. Andrew Jackson was a major general in the Continental Army, U.S. Army. William H. Harrison was a major general in the U.S. Army. And John Tyler was a captain in the U.S. Army. James K. Polk was a colonel in the U.S. Army. Zachary Taylor was a major general in the U.S. Army. Millard Fillmore was a major in the U.S. Army. Franklin Pierce was a brigadier general in the U.S. Army. James Buchanan was no official rank in the U.S. Army. That's what it says for James Buchanan. Abraham Lincoln was a captain in the Illinois militia. Andrew Johnson was a brigadier general in the U.S. Army. Ulysses S. Grant was a general in the U.S. Army. And Rutherford B. Hayes was a major general in the U.S. Army. And James A. Garfield was a major general in the U.S. Army. And Chester A. Arthur was a quartermaster general in the U.S. Army. And Benjamin Harrison was a brigadier general in the U.S. Army. And William McKinley was a brevet major in the U.S. Army. And Theodore Roosevelt was a colonel in the U.S. Army. And Harry S. Truman was a colonel in the U.S. Army. And Dwight D. Eisenhower was a general, like I said, 5 stars U.S. Army. And John F. Kennedy was a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy. Lyndon Baines Johnson was a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy. Richard M. Nixon was a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy. And Jimmy Carter was a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy. And Gerald R. Ford was a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy. And Ronald W. Reagan, which is Ronald Wilson Reagan, was a captain in the U.S. Army. And George H.W. Bush was a Lieutenant J.G. in the U.S. Navy. And George W. Bush was a lieutenant in the Texas Air National Guard. And again, that's this video for the Presidential Military Service and the seal of the President of the United States of America right there. And there you go. And that is from Jeffrey Scott Marlowe. That's me.